you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast, the hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hey folks, it's Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, the only things that makes it live. We're coming to you live from the Chris Voss Show studios here in Burbank. No, I was born in Burbank, but we're not really in Hollywood, eh? Anyway, guys, so we have an amazing show for you with an amazing mind. He's going to be sharing all of his insights, his intellect, and when you leave, you're going to be building multi-billion-dollar businesses too. So he's going to teach you everything you need to know. Luke, I just put a lot of work up there for you.
A lot of weight on my shoulders.
Like, oh, what kind of show did I sign up for?
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to be talking to him about all of his insights and improving the quality of your life, too, and how you can maybe work with him. In the meantime, go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss. Chris Voss, one of the TikTokity, all those crazy places on the internet. We have today an amazing young man joining with us, and we're going to be talking about his insights and everything that goes into what he does. Luke Peters is on the show with us today. He's an accomplished entrepreneur and the former CEO of New Air, a company he founded in 2001 and grew from garage status to a thriving business with over $600 million in cumulative sales. His journey began in Fountain Valley, California, where he learned the value of hard work while working in his family's donut shop. I did that as a kid. My uncle had a donut shop. It was kind of fun.
Oh, nice.
It was kind of fun. That's where I learned about the 5-minute rule. If you drop a donut on the floor, you can still pick it up and eat it.
Yeah.
It's good enough to send out to the front. I don't know. It was the 70s.
Yeah, it's no longer the 5-second rule.
Yeah, it was the 80s. They did weird shit with food. Under Luke's leadership, New Air achieved significant milestones, including $80 million in sales in a single year and multiple placements on the Inc. 500 list. He successfully pivoted the company from 100% B2C model to a multi-channel strategy, partnering with major retailers like Home Depot and Amazon. Welcome to the show. How are you, Luke?
Doing great, Chris. Really pleasure to be on.
Pleasure to have you as well. And we're going to learn about all the stuff you're doing. Give us .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interweb, which is in the sky?
Yeah, right now it's easy. Just find me on LinkedIn at Luke Peters or apexceo.co at apexceo.
So give us a 30,000 overview of your new project, what you're doing now, and how you're doing it.
Yeah, I ran that company for 20 years, Chris. Sold it. Was really, really fortunate. Learned a lot of things. Started it, with no funding, out of a garage with a family, and then retained all of the equity and then sold it private equity. Took a couple years off. I like to surf, so did some surfing, did some traveling, did some fun trips, and back working again. So now I'm coaching, advising CEOs, hopefully getting them to the exit as well.
Mm-hmm. Get to the exit.
That's right.
Isn't that a get to the chopper? That's what I'm thinking of. You've been on quite the journey, and tell us a little bit about, in your words, your upbringing and kind of how you went through your life. What got you started being an entrepreneur, maybe with some influences, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure. So growing up, Chris, you won't believe this. So growing up, I was in a family of 12. Okay.
Holy crap.
in Fountain Valley. Okay. This is in Southern California. So family of 12, there. Big family. So you had to fight for everything when you're in a big family like that, right? Yeah. So and we all get along. It's a great family dynamic. But anyways, we all work.
That's too bad.
Yeah, they're going.
Family, if you all get along, that seems really, I don't know,
unusual.
It's very unusual, actually. But I'm putting you on.
Yeah. So that was, of course, that that kind of imprints you with a lot, right? And we had the paper routes and all those types of things. But my parents had a donut shop, so that's what we grew up. I mean, I'm in the donut shop. And I'm not kidding you. I'm like 10, 12 years old. My dad's paying me 25 cents an hour, and I'm working graveyard flipping donuts.
Oh wow!
And there's a bar right behind us that closes at 2 a.m. and all the drunk patrons come out and they're ordering donuts. I mean, you learn the facts of life. Let's put it that way.
Hey, I told you not to tell people that I was drunk and ordering donuts, man. That's what I do.
That's where we met.
That's where, yep, in the chocolate-filled aisle. I don't know what that means. But so you go from donuts to building your own companies.
Yeah. So I, somehow made it through high school, at least likely to graduate. And then, went to college, got a degree, studied microbiology. So I really love science. So that was fun. Went to work for the government as a hazardous waste scientist, doing good things, not doing very much, unfortunately, but a good idea at the government to clean up the groundwater. And anyways, went to school. I'm driving a beat up truck, hour and a half to get to work. And my little brother didn't go to school, is doing some internet business, making a lot of money, driving a nice sports car. So that I was like, wait a minute, something's not right here. So I learned what he was doing, which looked a lot more fun than what I was doing, and burned the midnight oil, started the business at that time. So basically, I think we had 2 kids. This is like right after 2001 or right around 2001, 2 kids, and just started doing building the website and everything. And then my wife would answer phone calls as they would come in, and she would actually deliver the products. She'd actually go to Grainger. We were just basically arbitraging at the beginning, just buying stuff from Grainger, which is a commercial version of Home Depot, and reselling their stuff online. And that's how we started. But of course, later on, we built a brand and started importing product, and built a large company.
Yeah. And it all starts from that thing. And you come a long way from that. Was it 25 cents an hour?
Yeah, 25 cents. I never let that one go.
Yeah. I mean, I think people complain about stuff now. I think when I started out, I was 16, and you couldn't work unless you were 18, but you could work in the back end of a grocery store, like in the stocking it at night. But you couldn't work during the day in the front. It was like really weird. I don't know. We can't see your child labor, and if we don't see your child labor, then it's fine. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, put them in the back.
Yeah, put the 16-year-olds in the back. It was kind of like a Puffy Combs P. Diddy thing. Anyway, I don't know what that means. Anyway, those of you who that's going on right now, those of you watching the video 10 years from now, we have a lot of that on YouTube. People watch videos from 10 years ago. They go, that's not going on. That's not a new book. You're like, dude, look at the date. Anyway, so yeah, it didn't get paid well. So you launched your different companies, and how many successful exits have you had so far? I know that we had a few in the bio, I think.
Yeah, no, so actually, when I was in college, this is not a big exit, but I paid my way through school with a swimming pool business, had my own service, built up a clientele, and actually sold that business to a buddy who still runs it today, now 20 years later. And then as I'm growing New Air, I actually had started other companies within it, or even separate companies as a test, like to go into a new market. At one point we had a big pivot, and we went into multi-channel, so direct into retailers instead of selling online. And that worked so well. And so I've rolled those businesses all into New Air. So at the end, everything was rolled into New Air, and then sold that to private equity.
Oh, wow. It's pretty wild, all the stuff that's out there, and what you can take and do. So now you've started your own company. Tell us what the future is. What are you focusing on in services and things you're going to provide to people?
Yeah, sure. So when I was running New Air, like at the beginning, I didn't have any formal business training, right? So I had to learn everything along the way. And really the last 5 years, I learned a lot more. Okay. I wanted to sell my company, and I'll get to what I'm doing now. I wanted to sell my company, and and someone looked at the business, and they gave me some great advice. And in a nutshell, they basically said, you need to have higher margins, and you need to build a better brand, because, if your margins aren't that great, it's basically telling the world that, your brand isn't that strong. And, you got to have systems, and you're going to get, you need to be auditable and all these types of things. So I spent 5 years really cleaning up my company, getting the best people, building out great systems, putting in a new ERP, improving margins, like all of these things that you have to do to sort of get to the exit. And that's what I want to bring to this practice, where I work directly with CEOs. A lot of founders don't realize, like, when you sell, what's interesting, Chris, is that people don't actually, they don't think deep enough of what a sale means. So let's say let's just use like a $1 million number, right? Let's say your company's making $1 million, let's say, just for a round number.
Okay.
And let's say you're selling a product. Okay. It's not a service, because a service, most of it can go to the bottom line, but you're selling a product. Okay. So you have to have people, infrastructure, inventory, maybe things like that, right? So you're making $1 million, but you're probably having to reinvest back in your company. You are paying taxes. and maybe you're putting something in your pocket at the end of the day. Maybe you're putting a couple $100,000 in if you're growing. So you're making $1 million, but you're only getting a couple $100,000 in your pocket. If your business has a 5 times multiple on $1 million, now you're going to get paid 5x, and it could be 7x, it could be 10x, right? But there's also, you're potentially going to have add backs, which are things like sort of one-time expenses. So like your $1 million really to an investor could mean, because there's synergies between you and the investor, right? Maybe they, the way that you're doing, that you had to invest in your warehouse or some of these investments they don't have to do. So you can add those back. So now your 1 million might be 1.2 million. Everybody has add backs. And so now you're multiplying that by 5. See, so you're at a $6 million deal. And then you're going to pay capital gains on that instead of ordinary income. So your taxes are lower. So you at the end of the day, you were making in your pocket maybe 200,000 in that example in your bank account. And here you could have in one day pull in 6 million, minus some capital gains taxes. So it's a huge win. And then multiply that, if your company's doing 5 million or 10 million EBITDA. So it's way bigger than the win on your sale is way bigger than just a 5 or a 7 or an 8x multiple. It's way bigger than that because you have other things that come into play and you pull forward like 10, 15 years of time earnings is the way I look at it.
Yep.
So that's what I want to get them to. Like the way that I work is most business CEOs will, they have a lot of problems, but the problem is they have a lot of problems and really only 2 or 3 is what they should be working on. Like those are the ones that are going to make them money. People are always working on things that aren't making you money, right? We're working on these distractions. And so it's about getting focused. And I have a sort of a framework called, it basically is, I call it APPM. So it's alignment, product, people, and margins. That's what I focus on. Alignment, product, people, margins.
Why are those 3 things so important?
Okay, they're important because a lot of frameworks have 10 things you got to jump into. They're too complex, right? And when you think about, and a lot of them don't, 2 of the things in here are often not worked on or not focused on, let's say. So it's your product, okay? And also the margins. Now I know they're talked about, but I'm saying like literally really, really understanding your margins from the bottom up. You go at the transaction level all the way through all of the parties that are involved in that transaction. At every single transaction in your company, can you trace the margin on that? And most companies cannot. Even Fortune 500 companies cannot do this. So if you can, maybe the goal isn't to do that 100% of the time, but if you can do that on select transactions, you can learn a lot about your business. You go through transactions, you're like, wow, I didn't realize I was losing out here and this was costing me here. And I thought I was going to make, 40% margin, and here I'm only making 25% margin. And a lot of times people think they know this, but they don't know it for every transaction. So that margin in understanding it at the transactional level with all of the interparties that are involved is super important. Product. A lot of times, the product is usually the creative vision of the entrepreneur. Okay, so that's the entrepreneur's secret sauce. They should be working on product. They shouldn't be working on HR and operations and all this kind of stuff. And a lot of times, entrepreneurs will start a business and their product, it's going great. And then what happens? They get busy and they're kind of like this. Their products are getting old. They're not launching new products. You want to be swinging for singles and doubles, but you also want to be swinging for home runs. So you got to have some home run products that are being nurtured. We call that new product development. And so just understanding product, I always say, it's kind of like a football analogy. You have to win at every position in football, your O-line and your blocks, and every position matters, when you're at the goal line, let's say. And at your products, a lot of people, maybe they have 100 products or whatever it is, but they have 10 winners, but they got 90 losers, so you have to look at every one of your product, why it's a winner, why it's a loser, why it's losing, how you can turn it into a winner. Don't, too many times you look at the business, right? But that's too broad. You got to get down right to each product, right in the trenches. And then alignment and people. So alignment basically means it's communication. So it actually can be real simple, but this means get all of your team aligned towards the most important goals, which sounds obvious, but a lot of times entrepreneurs don't actually first of all, they need to take the time to decide what are the most important goals. Okay. That's strategic planning. And then you have to get your team on board. So a lot of times they dictate, hey, this is what we're doing. But no, you want to kind of come up with these goals. But the trick is you got to have your team arrive at them independently and get your team on the bus, right?
You got to get the buy-in.
You got to get the buy-in. If you don't get the buy-in, you got to get the buy-in, and hopefully you can even get skin in the game. If there's a big outcome, your leadership team's going to make a lot of money. That's what we're all after.
Mm-hmm.
And then people.
We want money.
Everybody wants. Listen.
Everybody wants money.
We're all motivated by being appreciated, but at the end of the day, you got to pay the bills. So everybody wants money.
That's true. That's true. Everyone wants money. But you're right. You have to have the buy-in. You've got to have everybody. You've got to evaluate stuff. What you speak of is what I sell a lot. One of the things that we used to do back in the day was we'd buy companies that were in trouble. So we ran an ad in the paper and said, we have money and loan for people that are having trouble with their business. Contact us. And it was wild because we'd have people calling us needing desperate help for their companies, and they would literally send us everything you could never get anyone to send you on their company, like their P&Ls, all this stuff. And then they would just send it over without even asking. You're just like, wow, okay, that's a lot of information you just gave me. That, and so we could cherry pick what we wanted. But 9 times out of 10, when I would approach companies that we would want to invest in, 9 times out of 10, I'd go meet with the entrepreneur, and literally most times they would be using the same business model that they started with. And they just had cash when they started their company, and they were just burning it into the ground on a burn rate. And they were finally running out of money. Sometimes it was a thing where maybe the first year it kind of worked, or sometimes it worked, and then all of a sudden the market changed. But 9 times out of 10, they were still in the same business model they started out with, and that was the problem. They hadn't really analyzed what they were doing. They hadn't done what you talked about, where they're like, adjusting for, future-proofing, market conditions, changing things. They just don't plan for any of it. They just figure that they've got enough money to burn through it, and somehow they'll find a profitable thing before they burn out their burn rate, I guess. And, so 9 times out of 10, I'd show up and I'd be like, wow, you've got something here that's pretty much in bankruptcy. You just haven't figured it out yet. You got maybe 3 months to hit the wall. And, I'd find their family was working there. And all the 99.9% of the time, I don't think there was ever a time where we were like, you need to stay. 99% of the time, we'd be like, we'll buy out your shit and save you from bankruptcy and save your credit. We'll give you maybe, I don't know, some little bit of walking money, but right now we're just buying a bankrupt company, and you're the problem, so you have to leave. That was really hard for them to hear, and your family needs to leave too. That was really hard for them to hear. And then a lot of times they'd be like, if you see value in it, then there must be something here. And I'm like, nah, you're not going to find it, because you need to go back to McDonald's. You really suck at this. And so I give him a first right of refusal. Was it first right of refusal thing, contract, and I tell them, I'd be like, call me first as soon as you possibly can. Because don't call me a week before bankruptcy court, because I can save you now, but I probably can't save you a week before bankruptcy court. And sure enough, they go try and find what, we had multiple companies and multiple stuff. So a lot of stuff we would, just find people that were asset rich and cash poor. We'd fold it into our companies. And, they'd always call me right before the week before bankruptcy. Hey, you want to buy me now? What did I tell you? Don't do that. And it was just crazy, man. It's just people that just couldn't get it. And they would ride that model into the fucking ground before they would change.
Yeah, I believe it. You know what I think, Chris? I think one thing we didn't talk about, but I think a big part of this is the mental game. Okay, I think handling stress and anxiety. Okay, I think sometimes when entrepreneurs have a hard time, like anybody, when you have a hard time and you're stressed and nervous, like those emotions can take over and you're not thinking right. So you have to have a way to pull yourself out of that and think logically. And sometimes people just, and when you're stressed, you can't change either. It's like, you're just like locked in, stressed, anxious. It's like a circle of death there. So it's not a good place to be.
The circle of death.
stay out of that.
It's to never get in the circle of death. Yeah, I mean, people, I've had companies where for 10 years or so, maybe 13, everything runs smooth. The business model is working, everything's just a smooth engine. You got all the kinks worked out. And then suddenly the market changes. Maybe interest rates change, maybe something is dynamic in the market, maybe new technology. I mean, AI is definitely disrupting a lot of things right now, and probably going to continue to do. But you've got to be able to adjust. You've got to be able to looking on the horizon for what's there, and then of course you've got to have your team be able to do a buy-in.
Yeah, there's a great book by Andy Grove. It's called "Only the Paranoid Survive." Andy Grove. Yeah, it's a fantastic book. Yeah, he was the CEO of Intel, I think, back in like the 90s, maybe 80s, 90s. I subscribe to that book.
I'm gonna grab it and read it because, we used to have this thing where we would call it look in the dragon's mouth and make the decisions. So when we would make big decisions, we would sit and do what we call look in the dragon's mouth, and we'd try and pick it apart and be like, okay, if we fail, can we live with this? If we spend this massive expenditure and it doesn't ROI on us, can we survive? And if we could live with the fallout, if things didn't work, we'd usually move forward. So we're always paranoid about everything.
Yeah.
I love it. One thing we've alluded to is the exiting process, starting a company and thinking about when you start it, about how you can exit it and setting it up so that you can have you can have an exit that you can pass off right now. And let's get into a little bit of that because as I told you before in the green room, I used to have this whole entrepreneur vision of creating an empire of companies, which I did. But 2008 came along and said, why don't you just take that and go fuck yourself? We're going to wipe the map and you can start over, bitch. And so I did because I really didn't have an option. And, one of our biggest crown jewels was a mortgage company. So that didn't work out well.
Yeah, not good timing.
Did good for the first 20 years. After that, nah. So you've got to be ready for those changes. Talk to us about the importance of preparing for an exit and thinking about, instead of thinking like I do, where you're building an empire forever, turning over these companies.
Okay. Yeah. So one thing that's interesting is that if you are successfully running a company with good margins, let's say upper quartile of your industry, and you're not at the center of it, obviously, for podcast media, that's hard to do. But a business where you have a product, you're not at the center of it. You have a good management team and your margins are good and the business is not that you don't have too much customer concentration. So you have some diversification on, so think of all these things as de-risking your business, right? So an investor looks at it, you're like, my business is great. They don't care. They don't know you. Of course, that's what you're going to say. But from an analytical standpoint, what they look at is de-risking. All of those elements de-risk your business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
if you have one big client and then everybody else is small, I mean, you have issues. Or if you're the person who does all the work in your company.
Exactly, because they know when they buy you, you might run, you might take off. So the idea is de-risk your business. Out. Yeah, I'm out. Time to go surfing. So yeah, you have to de-risk it. And so even if you don't want to sell, you should do all these things because one day you might want to sell. There could be a health issue. There could be anything could come up in your personal life. You're like, oh man, my kids don't want to take it over, or I don't have family to take it over, whatever the case is. And you have this asset, and now you have to go figure out how to sell. But you could do these things ahead of time. So I know every entrepreneur isn't saying, oh, I want to go sell, but my philosophy is everybody should be ready to sell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, especially if you can get 4 or 5 times your multiple or more, whatever.
In some industries, it's a lot more. And what happens is there's certain breakpoints. So if let's say you're 500,000 to say 3 million, you're likely to be acquired by another company, probably not private equity at that point. Okay. Mm-hmm. So the smaller businesses, and we're talking about that's your profit, 500,000 to 3 million and they look at EBITDA. Sometimes they'll look at, seller discretionary earnings, or they'll have different names, SDE, but essentially your profit, right? Mm-hmm. With some things added back. And once you get over 5 million or right about 5 million, now you're private equity territory. So the multiples go up a little bit because there's more players, there's more bidders in the industry. And then once you're over, 10 or 15 million EBITDA, now you go to even another level of multiple. So just think of everything as a multiple on your earnings. And for some businesses, it might be, 2, 3, 4, or 5 at the lower range. And then it might go up to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 at the mid range. And then it could go over 10 to 12 once you start making 10, 15 million. And this is selling a product. And if you're selling software, it's a totally different valuation model. That's based on, it's not based on your EBITDA. You can make a lot more. It could be based on your top line. It could be based on recurring revenue multiples, and there are lots of ways to win on that side.
So people need to think about this in the future. How can people onboard with you? What type of people do you work with? Do they have a minimum net worth, all that stuff? How does that work?
Sure. I think I'm a good fit. I always, subscribe by, like, my business, I ran it from garage up to about 80 million. So I think I'm great for anybody in that range. When I'm at a networking event, I always want to go to the room with the richer people in it, let's say, and try to learn from them. So I think I'm good there. And if someone's doing 100, 200 million, they probably can find, somebody who's coaching those larger companies. But I like the founder CEO, someone who's bootstrapped it, someone who maybe they don't have funding or very little funding. They're on their own. They're trying to work with banks or cash flow and grow their business. And they've got dreams and goals. And I can, the way I think about it is, most CEOs are working too many hours. I can put in just really changing your mindset and put systems in place and a different way of thinking and getting the right people. And you can actually reduce your time at the office, improve your life, more time at your hobbies and family, and have your business grow at the same time. So it's kind of in that zone of founder all the way up to the 50, 70, 80 million.
It's been very insightful to have you on. People can do a free strategy call with you, it looks like, on your website as well, too.
Exactly. Yeah. Go hop over to amzn.to. There's a calendar there, free strategy call. And actually, if you go onto that call, I can give you one of our planning documents. Oh, really? Then go over it on the call. Yeah.
There you go.
It's a lot of fun for me.
Free strategy call, get a free planning document on how to plan your stuff. And, if you don't have a plan, what's that old line?
You're doomed for success.
people who fail to plan to fail. That's it, I think.
Yeah.
This has been very insightful to have you on the show. Pitch people out your .com there so people can pick it up one last time, and we'll head out.
apexceo.co. Thanks, Chris. Really appreciate it. And find me on LinkedIn.
Thank you, Luke. And check him out on LinkedIn as well. Thanks so much for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss, one of the TikTokity, and all those crazy places on the internet. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you next time. That should have us out. Fun is fun.